Okay. You don't
and
see
I'm
it?
not seeing it.
We
Oh,
should
there you
be.
are. Got it. Got it. Got it. Share it where?
Fantastic. If you'll share it to the group just in case. I want to do brief introductions. You all can do more in-depth introductions if you want of
All right.
yourselves.
Hold on one second.
I'm
We're
going to
not
go.
shared yet.
Yep. While you're working on that, I'm going to go ahead and start because by the time you get to it, the delay, there's like a 20-second delay. First up, we've got Joey Vitale. He's an awesome online guru. We got Lee Rosen, who probably doesn't need an introduction. He's in Tokyo right now. We've got Seth Price with Blue Shark and Jay Ruane with FirmFlex. Jim Hacking, you all know him, and then myself, Tyson Mutrick. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're gonna go around. I'm gonna go in order of sweep. We're in the group now. I'm gonna go around. We're gonna try to talk about mindset for a second because there's a lot going on in the world, and so let's just talk about mindset for a second. Kind of where you are, what your perception is. And so Joey, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Man. So I I was talking with one of my business coaches earlier today about how a lot of people right now are reacting to stories that they're telling themselves about what's happening instead of what's actually happening. And I think it's really hard right now to figure out kind of how you should be responding. Like Tyson, I remember you saying earlier today, am I being too positive? And I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm excited to be here. Tyson told me that if I needed, I could just be an associate at his firm. So I'm excited to just have that as a plan B if necessary.
That's right. That's right. All right, Lee. So what do you got for us?
I'm old. I'm 58 years old. This is my fourth recession as a business owner. It is always a shock. It never seems like we expect it, even though, it's a cycle that repeats over and over again. But each time it has happened, it surprises me. You get through it, you come out the other end of it. It just is the nature of being in business. It comes, it goes. This is another one. We're so early in it that it feels very disturbing and upsetting. But the key here is you have a vision for your business. You've had it. It's what you've been doing all along. You stick to it. You don't panic. You look at this as an opportunity to make a little bit of an adjustment. If I have a second, I'll tell you a quick story. I was in a Hilton all-inclusive resort last week in Mexico, and I watched as the guests left because you can imagine this is hitting the travel business hard. They quickly cut the staff hours. The wait people in the restaurants disappeared, the bartenders disappeared, the bellmen disappeared, and instantly maintenance and renovation people appeared. They went right to work repairing the hotel. They look at it as we've got payroll we're going to spend. We've got reserves. This is just part of the business. We know we're going to be in business a year from now. We might as well clean up, get things painted, get things back up to tip-top condition. And they're just rolling along. And the great thing about having a law firm is your staff and your team and your maintenance people are all the same. You can use the staff to do both. We don't need to lay off one group to bring in another group. We can put everybody to work on these things. And so you just stick to your vision, you don't panic, and you figure out what you do during this period, and you know the next period is coming, and it will. And literally 4 times I've been through this. It's a dip, and then you go back up, and life gets back to normal in one form or another. And if you weren't expecting it, you just weren't paying attention. And I'm always surprised, but this is the nature of the game, and it'll come again. If you're young and early, this one will get over with, and then there'll be the next one. It's coming.
I love that perspective, Lee. And I think we're going to come back to some of what you said in a little bit too, especially with vision. I think that a lot of that's really, really important. Seth, what do you got for us? How you feeling?
I'm still in the weeds between Price Benowitz, where I have 40 lawyers in the staff, and Blue Shark. Part of it is, while I would love to have I'm going to, make lemonade out of lemons. Right now, I feel like I need to make sure, to take an analogy, that there's enough gas in the truck when we get to the point that we're out of this first blip, because I see this as a two-part problem. One, the economy stopping, which is not something we've seen out of the last 4 go-arounds that Lee's referred to. And then secondly, once this is over, preparing for that recession. So right now, I'm very conscious of keeping cash flow low, keeping as many employees as possible employed. Would love the idea of maintenance and doing those things and putting those things in place. But the number one priority is to make sure we have an ongoing entity when the first phase of this is over so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that will be there.
Good perspective. And just so everyone knows, we are monitoring the comments. So if you have any questions along the way, I'll pass them along. So go ahead and post any comments that you might have, and we'll try to get to them. Jay Ruane, what you got for us?
So it's interesting because, as a criminal defense lawyer, I wind up talking to a lot of clients about their interactions with police officers when those lights go on behind them. And that's usually a time when the body goes into flight or fight mode. And what we see is that when in a stressful situation, the body shuts down certain things. Your hands and your feet, they tend to get cold because the blood is rushing to your thorax, and it's making sure that your heart is pumping, your legs are taking in oxygen, your brain is hypersensitive, right? So if a person is getting pulled over for your DUI, in my world, they'll say, I couldn't walk on that straight line because, I felt uncoordinated as a result of the fact that I was so nervous, not necessarily because I was so intoxicated. And so what I have to explain to them when we meet is that, your body has this natural defense mechanism where it tends to focus on the things we need to stay alive being taken care of, right? And so that's what you need to do in this situation. You need to focus on the things that are going to keep you alive as a firm and not panic, because the panic, is what's really going to hurt your business long term. We've built practices that can withstand a storm of some sort, but if you just go around running like crazy saying the sky is coming down, you're not going to be able to focus on what you need to get done. So and it's funny, I had a conversation a little earlier with Marco Brown out in Utah. And I said, it's interesting, Marco, I feel like for the last 10 days, I've been running 100 miles an hour. And I actually have more time than that right now. I should actually be slowing down and making more tactical move. But everything that I do, I feel like there's a sense of urgency with it. When I decided 12 days ago, hey, we're leaving the offices and going remote, it was, guys, we're closing at 5, prepare to work from home for the next 12 days or for the next month or 6 weeks. And it was seamless. My office, we have a system for doing it. Everyone just said, okay, we'll see you tomorrow morning. And they all signed on the next day and we were able to go. So, you've built the systems in your practice. Don't panic. I think about that scene from Apocalypse Now as the bombs are raining down and Robert Duvall's just walking across the sand. As the bombs are coming down, he's calling out orders to his troops. That's what you need to be in this situation. Not panic, apply your systems, and win.
Good advice. All right, Jimmy, what you got for us?
So for me, this is a time for clarity. We are the leaders, we are the captains of our ships, that not only do we need to be focused on the right things, but we need to be very deliberate, and we need to spend a lot more time thinking. We have more of an opportunity to sit still and to think, like Jay said, and we have to do that. We can't just be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. I've actually seen actual immigration lawyers that I know, one let me know that they're going to be laying off a bunch of people. They already know that today. And I have another immigration lawyer who is literally saying goodbye to people on Twitter. These are people who run firms. And I think that that's a real disservice to their firms and to their messaging and to their future. I think that we have spent so much time and energy for these last 3 years with such great lawyers in our group that we are well positioned for this as much as we can be. Nobody saw this coming, like Lee said, but we have to be deliberate in what we're thinking. We have to be realistic about where we are at the moment, and we have to keep an eye on the future, and we have to stay balanced and focused, and we have to get enough sleep. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to be leaders. We have to help our team feel confident. And we have to be realistic with them. We have to be transparent. If calls start going down and income starts going down, then you're going to have a different conversation. But I think in talking to your team, it's important to talk about what your intention is. Where do you see things headed? What do you think is going to happen? And to do it in an even mannered kind of a way. I also think that too many people are watching too much of the news. I turned off the news a week ago, and I can't tell you I've slept better, I've thought more clearly, I've been more positive. I'm going all in on kindness and deliberateness and gentleness and leading. I'm meditating more, I'm exercising more, I'm doing more of the things that I should be doing all the time, but I'm doing that to combat the missiles flying by on either side, right? And so I encourage everyone to stick to their routine, make sure they get enough sleep. And I'll end with an interview I saw today from a guy named Todd Herman. He's the one that had that article where he's been interviewing now up to 72 business owners, and he coded the language, and he put people into sort of three groups: the groups that were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, ones who were in total denial, and ones who were planning. And he could just tell by the language and the words that they were using how they were going to be successful. And the quote that he ended the show with that I heard today was, "You cannot solve a problem that you are not willing to have or accept." So there's a whole lot of acceptance here. There's a whole lot that's out of our control. There's a whole lot of this that we wish didn't happen. But we actually, as hard as it is, I just got word that one of my favorite uncles in Chicago is on a respirator, and he's actually having to share it with another person. One goes on for 2 hours, then he goes on for 2 hours. So it's patently absurd, but we have these minds, and we have to use our minds to stay focused and to be present and to do the best job that we can.
Good advice, and I agree with everyone. I guess the way I look at it, it's pretty much the same way I look at everything. And Joey heard me say this earlier. I sort of feel like I don't know. I feel like everyone's sort of freaking out. And I'm just really really calm about it, and maybe I'm just too positive about it. But I guess the way I look at it is I can look at it like this. Like I can look at like the guy that just missed a fly ball, and all he's thinking about is missing the fly ball and costing his team a run. And then he gets up to bat and he strikes out in the next inning. Like I can be that guy, or I can be the one where I said, okay, knees bent, head up, glove ready for the next ball to come to me. And then whenever I'm up to bat next, I can hit it and I can be ready for that ball to come down the plate and for me to hit it. So I can take one of two approaches. I'm taking the latter approach. I'm taking the approach where I'm ready. I'm moving on to the next thing. I'm doing the next thing that I can control to make sure that we're ready for this. And the way we put it with the firm is we're going on offense. When it comes to litigation stuff, we're going on offense. When it comes to marketing, we're going on offense. Because I think, and I would love to hear Lee's perspective on this, because I think if you look at the firms in the past recessions, the ones that went under are the ones that put their heads in the sand and they sort of recoiled and they said, okay, I can't handle this. And they were the one where they missed the fly ball and then they struck out the next at bat. Instead, if you go on offense, I think you'll be ready even stronger whenever you get through this. And so that's the perspective we're taking. But Jimmy, you had a really good question for Lee about working remotely and how the firm was set up. So you want to ask that question? You're on mute. Hey, Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Tyson and I just had Ben Glass on the show the other day, and one of my favorite interviews that I've ever heard Ben do was with Lee. And so my question for Lee is, Lee, what do you think, how would you be responding differently right now if you hadn't done everything that you've done to make your office, the way that it is, where you're able to work remotely and your team whole works remotely? What if you were one of the majority of lawyers who still had a full-time office and hadn't had the foresight that you had before to build what you have, what would be going through your mind right now?
Well, I've been doing this for 12 years, working remotely, and it's not rocket science, as everyone has quickly figured out, I think. If you have a laptop and a phone and a set of earbuds, you're good to go, and you can make money anywhere you want to sit, in any coffee shop or spare room, or I'm sitting on the bed, in a hotel in Tokyo. There's just not that much to this, and so what I really sense from the folks that I'm talking to is not that they're really encountering any resistance to doing this. It's pretty simple stuff. They just they're just realizing that this is easy and doable. The people who I think are really struggling, and the thing that I worry about with some of our institute members, is people who are not paperless, people who still have servers or old-fashioned phone systems, and they're kind of in a difficult spot, because they can't easily transfer that technology. And so I think that would have to be my focus right now. I'd invest in those processes and do what I can when I can to get them in place, because this is all old technology at this point. I have people talking about soft phones and all that like it's a brand new idea, and of course this stuff is now mature, been around forever. So I think the real struggle would be if you haven't made any steps, you got to go ahead and do it, because if it's not this problem, it's going to be the next problem.
So true. There's a really big firm in I'm not even going to mention the town. They're scrambling right now. I've heard that they're really, really scrambling because they weren't ready for it. It's just kind of crazy to me that they're using technology from 10 years ago and they just weren't ready for any of this. It's kind of nuts to me. But I'm going to get a little more serious right now, though. Jay and Seth, you've had to make some pretty tough decisions lately, and you're not the only one. I'm sure there are other people who have had to make some tough decisions. So, do you all want to talk about that? I mean, I think it would be a relief to hear other people talk about it, especially people that are in your seats that are very successful attorneys. And I think it's important to hear from you all. So, will you talk about that a little bit?
Jay and I have been talking back and forth over the last few days. I think for all the listeners, let me take a step back for a second. Having multiple practice areas, 5-6 practice areas within a firm over a few different states, and watching Blue Shark that has clients from all over the country with all different practice areas, the practice area you're in is going to change dramatically what stage you're at. So at one end of the spectrum, trust and estates has been booming. We've had some of our busiest weeks the last couple of weeks, where people are dealing with mortality issues, et cetera, just on the planning side. On the immigration side, similar. People are still coming in. They're insisting to come in, even though the city is on lockdown. Middle category, the plaintiff's practice, Tyson, where you're sitting. Right now, the insurance companies are still settling cases. Checks are coming in the mail. If you have a practice with enough inventory, it's really, we have not made a single layoff in that area. That area is running really nicely. The biggest challenge is, as Leah was talking about before, is just making sure that we are quickly doing in a matter of hours what Leah's done over 12 years, which is being fully remote. The issue comes down to some of the practice areas like criminal that Jay and I have spent a lot of time building a practice in. That area in particular has been the hardest hit, almost stuck into a restaurant, in that arrests have stopped, you don't have court, and payment plans are quickly going to become a problem as people don't have jobs. And that trifecta we're dealing with there means that how we deal with that practice and having to make strategic cuts there, if we didn't, we would not have a firm, in a number of weeks or months. And what's frustrating while watching the news about the bailouts, and I'd love to hear Jay's thoughts on this, is that they're going to be a short-term Band-Aid, but that if the economy, the velocity economy has to come, that particular area is not going to move. I think second hit will be other fee-for-service areas. And at some point, depending how maniacal the insurance companies are, if they cut off funds for settlements, you're going to be using up your reserves. And the question is, how much reserves do you have?
Yeah, I can address that too from a criminal defense perspective. Our revenue in the last, say, 7 days versus the 7 days before that is down 90%. But it's interesting. We're still getting calls. We're getting calls for some of our secondary practice areas. Pardons and expungements, is a high 6-figure practice group for us. That's still working. That's still generating business, because most of the guys who are looking for those clients are blue collar workers who are still out there working, getting paychecks. Speeding tickets is dipping, but not as much as I thought it would. Fewer police officers are pulling over people. DUI is gone. I mean, it's just dropped like a bucket because people aren't going out. The restaurants are closed. The bars are closed. We are, like, in a criminal practice, we are like restaurants in that we have high turnover and short windows. But you need to understand that and be prepared for it. We did have to make some cuts. Like, I cut my part-timers that work nights and weekends because the phones weren't ringing, and they were great intake people, but if the phones don't ring, they're not doing anything. So, we move over to a system where we outsource that work to a company that does just that and can man our phones. So we can still be up, but we aren't necessarily paying for people butts in our seats. And because we have the technology, we can do that. I do agree with Seth, that depending how long this goes, it's going to be interesting. Courts in Connecticut are starting to move things till June. Now, it's March 25th, and we're getting told cases will be continued till June. That's going to significantly impact profitability on criminal defense practitioners, nationwide.
Joey, I want to kick one over to you. I was really glad when Tyson said that you could appear on the show tonight, and one of the main reasons was your perspective on things is usually positive and sort of realistic at the same time. And I was just wondering, how is your practice sort of being affected by this, and where do you think things are headed for lawyers who are making that transition into more of a remote practice?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks you guys for having me. It's like an honor to be in this group of people. I think so highly of all of you guys. So it's interesting because the week before this became kind of what it was, I was gone for a week at a conference, and about a year ago, I took a week-long break, and the goal was for the company to survive. And 2 weeks ago, when I took the break, I realized that I had kind of passed that milestone of being away from the firm and it's still surviving, but I wasn't there to do any lead gen that whole week. And so right now I'm still trying to figure out what loss of sales are coming from a larger pandemic versus me just being, not having those sales reins for a week. But, I was thinking a lot about what Tyson was saying in terms of, the sports metaphor. And he also was talking about the importance of a vision. And Tyson, I'd love for you to talk more about that if I could just pass the mic over to you, because I think that one of the most harmful things we can do right now is get super in our heads and think about, a play that we messed up on. And I think the way to stay in the zone right now is to have a vision that is keeping you focused. And I think a lot of people, their head is, how do I survive this versus how do I not only get through this, but stay aligned with where my vision is. So how are you using this time to make sure that you're still aligned with your long-term vision?
Good question. It's funny, 'cause I think vision is simple to some people. I think it's complicated to other people. I think some people think, oh my gosh, I've got to know this vision, and it's so hard to figure out. To me, it's really simple. I know exactly where I want to be in 30 years. And so I then have built, guideposts along the way. I know where I'm headed. And so no matter what I do, I know where I'm headed when it comes to a firm, when it comes to my family. And so to me, it's easy. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. So that's part of this too, is like whenever this all came about, I wasn't that worried because I still know where I'm headed long term. I mean, there are some short-term decisions that we may have to make at some point. We're not there yet, but because we're still on track for our vision. And so everything that I do every single day is directed towards that vision. Everything we do every quarter is directed towards that vision. And I've heard people say, well, I don't know what my vision is. I don't know where I want to be in 5 and 10 years. That's okay. I get that's fine. I'm just telling you, if you do know it, it's way, way easier. It's way easier once you know where you're headed. For example, like Jim will tell you, like Jim was one of my professors in law school. I knew what I wanted to do when it comes to a firm really early. And so I was probably one of his better students because I knew what I wanted to do. So the sooner you know where you want to go with things, whatever it is in life, the easier it is because you'll never go off track. You just won't because you know where you're headed. And I want to pass it to Lee on because we're on vision. I'm glad you tossed it to me, Joey, because I wanted to ask Lee about vision next too because I want to get his perspective too. So Lee, if you'll talk about vision as well, I appreciate it.
Well, I think you nail it. I mean, it isn't rocket science. It's seeing where you want to go, and the more you have that 30-year perspective, you realize that this 6-month glitch we're in the middle of now, and I think we can start seeing the end of this now. If you look around the world at what's happening, we see the experience of a country coming out the other side of it. In China, their economy is turned back on. By May, it'll be turned way back on. And you see what's happening in Hong Kong and in Singapore. So we know this ends. And so you start to have some context of this is your 30-year vision or your 10-year or whatever you're able to see in your mind. And we're in this little glitch, this little dip. And the reality is, and I don't mean to minimize this. I mean, I agree with the comments of everybody. This is a tough period, but it's so valuable to step out and look at it from a high level and realize that for a solo practitioner, this is really devastating and difficult, but so is like getting married or having a baby. I mean, those things impact your business and they slow your path toward creating your vision for your business in significant ways, just not sleeping for a year Jay's got like, I don't know, 1,207 children or something in his house. It's like, these are big impactful events, and recessions like this are big impactful events. But if you know where you're going, you just keep going there. So you do have to decide. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Tyson. You pick it, you head toward it, and you just roll on, and you know you're going to hit some obstacles, and this is just another big one you're going to hit.
I love what Lee just said because I've been planning for 5 years for the what if I get hit by a bus and live scenario in my firm. So I have a list of these are the passwords you need to know. These are all the things. This is why we can go remotely. So all of those things, and it's great because if you're living this right now for the very first time and you're 5 or 10 years into your practice, recognize, like Lee said, this is going to happen again. So as you're working home, start writing out the things that you've needed to do so that you can build that system base for the future. I mean, this is an incredible opportunity that we all have to be living through a very unique scenario that hopefully doesn't repeat obviously the same way, but we will all have situations like this that impact our practices. Now's the time to get ahead of it. Don't put your head in the sand. Actually use this as a mechanism to really build your firm to succeed through anything.
And I sort of feel like a multiple personality person. Like there are 3 different things going on. One, and those of you who know me on this call and beyond, like I've spent every waking moment building these businesses and wanting to help people and employ people and build something sustainable. So the one is, okay, we're still moving forward. The second is how do we make sure there's something there? And it's a combination of strategic, very tough decisions that have to be made in real time to not react through fear, but react strategically to make sure that you're taking care of as many people as you can. But I gotta say, on a personal level, it takes a toll because you work so hard for so long and in such a small period of time. This is in a gradual recession. You've had to undo many things you've spent years putting in place. So there's sort of this psychological portion in the middle that's really tough. And the third, what I'm trying to do is spend whatever time I can, because there is additional time, as a few of you guys have referred to, that what can you do to help in the community, whether it's helping out on helping to support a food drive that one neighbor started to help the doctors and nurses and staff at a hospital, or something I launched tonight where, hey, we have a footprint over the 3-state area. Let's create an email and get anybody who's older or having, physical ailments that shouldn't be outside right now, getting them supplies if they don't have somebody to get them medicine, food, or what have you. So I feel like I'm trying to do 3 things at once, and that can be a very stressful piece. But at the same time, each one incredibly necessary, and none of them really you want to drop.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, we're going to get to the questions in the Facebook group here in a minute, but before we do, I just want to get everyone's thoughts, and maybe I'll start with Jay. And that's the question of marketing. Obviously, marketing is really important for all law firms, and I'm always loath to throttle down the marketing, but I'm wondering what have been your thoughts as far as sensitivities around marketing while people are getting sick and dying?
So I don't think now is the time that you want to be saying, hey, are you stuck at home with coronavirus? You can hire us. But this is a great opportunity for building a brand and a brand name in your local community that talks about how you are concerned about the members of your community. So like Joey, who does trademark stuff for, small shops. This is a great opportunity for him to speak to those people. Jim, you can speak to the immigrant community. I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about like literally the people in your neighborhood, but if you're like me or Tyson, who have a regional practice, that is your neighborhood. So you want to do the hometown stuff. You know me, I love social. I think social is the best opportunity right now for you to be in front of people. People are spending extra hours a day on social. This is an opportunity for who you are as a person to stand out among the crowd. We've at FirmFlex, we're going to push something out tomorrow to reclaim the feed, right? We want to reclaim the feed and get it away from all coronavirus stuff and talk about the good things in your community. And so there's great things that you can do. And I put out yesterday, for our firm, we put out a driving tour, a historical driving tour of Connecticut with 12 different locations. So people can get out of the house but still stay in their car. And that would allow them to get out of the house, see something, get a little fresh air, but not necessarily interact with other people. This is your opportunity to establish who your brand is while all eyes are on their phone. And if you don't take this opportunity, you're really going to regret it. I don't think it's time to be aggressively selling. I think it's about showing who you are, showing how you care for your community, care for your people, and try to bring some levity and all those things to show that you're a well-rounded business. And that's going to be your great opportunity to really get ahead on this. I think you should be posting on social as much as possible and not being a fearmonger, but trying to build things up.
Anybody else have anything on that? I think that's great.
Anything else on marketing?
Yeah, on Jim's question about how to treat marketing right now.
Well, I agree completely with Jay. You don't want to be the douchebag pushing the hire me while the corona. You want to be subtle about it. I don't know about you guys, but man, people are coming out of the woodwork calling me. I haven't talked to this many people, old friends literally I'm messaging with a guy from high school. My wife got a message from someone she went to high school with. This is the most fantastic time to build your network. I'm looking at Seth Price, who I had to block him because he calls me so much just to chat. It's like
I didn't know
some
that was a
people
possibility. I should
dude, I can send you the instructions. Yeah, he's blocking. Yeah, he moves to different platforms, so you got to do a lot of blocking. But Seth is the most amazing networker on the planet, and most of us, we aren't. I mean, most of us are not. It's a tough thing to connect with old folks that we haven't talked to in a while, or to even connect with new people you've never met before. But people welcome this right now. It's like an open door to people's homes. They want to say, like, come on in and let's, BS for a while. People are happy to have human connection. And so those relationships, you may not see the payoff today, but Seth's whole business is built on this, on this stalking people until they'll talk to him. And he's got 40 lawyers. So clearly it works. And this is the time to do it because people are not too busy to chat with you, and they want to talk to you instead of they can look at their wife or their spouse. I say wife, we got 5 guys on the call, but they want to talk to you instead of whoever it is they're stuck in the house with. This is a break from yelling at the kids. So I agree with Jay about social, and there are lots of other ways you can build your business. But man, this is nirvana for building your network.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
agree
want to
with
say
Lee. Although
ahead,
he may
Seth.
not take my calls on a regular basis, I've learned a lot from Lee over the years. He's an incredible person with a lot of forethought that much of which I wish I had bottled up. But I would say the thing that we have is time, and that the ability to make sure that we leverage that time wisely. I love the digital space, and people. There's nothing better, and Joey's great at this. Is getting original content that you wouldn't normally have the time to do. And if you can somehow use some percentage of this newfound time to do that, at the other end of this, you're going to be pretty happy. It's like planting a tree. When was the best time? Yesterday. Well, we have that time right now, and as Lee has mentioned, it's gonna come back around positively at some point, and that if we've paid our dues and planted those seeds, that we're going to have something at the other end. So that's really what I'm focused on. It's not easy because there are all these other activities, at least in the first week or two, but making sure that we, as soon as those basics are taken care of, that we immediately turn that excess time, whether it's yourself or staff, into somebody who can build those assets that are available for you in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. And anybody who might be worried that now is not the time to be a little goofy and silly on social needs to check out what Bernard is doing on TikTok with his daughters.
Awesome.
It is so good. And it's what people want right now. He's doing such a good job. My biggest priority right now is making sure that my referral partners are taken care of. And so I'm reminding myself that the question that I need to be asking isn't what can I do to help right now, but what are the problems that people need solved? And if I have certain connections and people who are offering something that really should be taking higher priority right now, what can I do to make sure that I can be a voice to that? I have a public speaking coach who is helping a lot of people right now who had planned on doing a lot of conferences learn how to book virtual summits. And a lot of people are interested in that right now. And figuring out the people in your communities who, let's be real, might be of more value to people right now. Seeing what you can do to really love on, especially if they're referral partners, doing what you can do to take the mic that you have and use it to promote somebody else right now.
Good stuff. All right, so I'm going to get to one of the first questions. It's Nick Brockmeyer, and I think this is a really good question because he talks about how we're always talking about niching down and make sure you niche down and that the rich is in the niches, which that I definitely believe in that. But is now a time for us to maybe venture into other niches to help supplement income? So whoever wants to take that one, what are your thoughts?
I'll go. I think now's the time to niche down the same as you have before. I think now is not the time to water down your message. Now is not the time where people are going to smell desperation because you know me as the immigration lawyer, but hey, I'll do your will. I mean, that's the worst thing you want to do because as Lee so eloquently started the show with, this is going to come back around. We're going to be back. I mean, the economy was humming I don't think it's like 2008 where it was based on faulty economics. I think the economy was really humming. And I think that we will recover from this faster. I hope so. I was talking to a buddy of mine who helps run a 120 lawyer law firm today, and he's like, we're going to have 2 years of it's going to be worse than the Great Depression. I don't think that's accurate, but I think that we just really need to keep our minds straight. So I don't think you should start becoming a generalist now. I think now's the worst time because it's just going to dilute your message in a time when clarity, like I said at the beginning, is necessary.
I agree with Jim.
Go ahead, Jay.
I agree with Jim. It wouldn't surprise me if that 120 lawyer firm does have 2 years of bad stuff going on because they're a legacy firm that hasn't really adapted to the new economy necessarily. I think now for people like us, and let me put this situation by you. Say, I have a criminal defense firm and I said, you know what, I've got a high performing bankruptcy and a high performing divorce law website that we've kept up and running and just parse out the leads to other people. But now I'm going to keep that stuff in-house. I have no passion for that work. And so what'll happen is I'll take in those cases, they'll sit there, None of my people will want to do them. We'll wind up on the end of a bar complaint. We won't do quality work. It'll hurt our brand overall. And so I don't think it's necessarily the right time to add more practice areas just to get you cash flow. I think you could wind up having the cure be worse than the illness in that situation. Not to parrot something that somebody else had said, but if you take on cases you don't want to do, you're not going to, and you don't necessarily know how to do them efficiently, you're not going to be in the best position, and it's going to hurt you long term. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the other people in this chat can say with a lot more expertise than I can that when you're niche down, then your messaging makes it seem even more like you're talking to that one person specifically. And so you'll get higher conversion rates on all of those messaging layers than if you try and reach a broad audience.
Good stuff. All right, so I can't find the question, so I'm gonna paraphrase the question. There's a lot of comments in here. So, how is everybody dealing with the, I guess, inconsistent work or inconsistent new signups when it comes to handling workflows and everything? Because there's going to be, especially, I know Jay and Seth, you both kind of mentioned it. You've had a drop in new signups, but I think this might go up and down at times. It just depends on what governors do what mayors do what. So how's everybody dealing with those? How's everyone managing the differences in workflows? And Jay, I guess Jay and Seth, you all are dealing with this now, so why don't you all start it off?
All right, well, I can go first. One of the wonderful things I was able to do, something that I've wanted to do for years, actually since I was part of Lee's Rosen Institute, and I talked to them about this probably 4.5 years ago, was I was finally able to have conversations with my attorneys, and I took them to a sort of a pay for what you do model rather than a straight salary. So I had that conversation with them about 10 days ago. They all said, hey, we're happy to do that if it means we get to keep our position. So I'm actually my business is getting better already because of it. When it comes to cash flow, I have one sales lawyer who's my partner, who's been with me. She's, we're going through our old leads on some of our ancillary products like the pardons and expungement, and she's, getting creative with payment plans, and she's generating money. And where we are today on Wednesday in this week, we have enough revenue to double our worst week ever, which was February, a week in February of 2015. That was our worst week. We keep it as our worst week. We know what it was. We've already doubled that this week. So as I said to Teresa, I said, hey, we're doing okay. That was our worst week, and look at all the great weeks that came behind it. So, yeah, it's not fun. I'm not saying that this is fun. It's challenging, but we are going to get through this. I'm going to be practicing law in a couple of months, and everything will have changed again.
And while we want to keep our core team there, one of the benefits I would argue is that, look, if you listen to John Morgan, Jack Welch, who just passed, any of these guys, we should be calling the bottom 10% of our team. I don't know, Lee, how you do that if you just, exfoliate a lot. But, for the rest of us, we have, we end up with staff that in a perfect world, we would be upgrading. So, I'm trying to make some lemonade out of this. If, as short term, we are sort of tightening things. We are going through and creating cost savings that normally things have been pretty good for a long time. And we canceled every credit card, and every single charge has to be reapproved with the new cards when they arrive. ACHs are turned off, turned back on. One by one is every expense. And am I doing it now because I want to make sure that we have gas in the engine? Yes. But should I have been doing this? Yeah, I should be doing this. And you find all these random subscriptions that you started that you may or may not be using properly or enough, especially at our scale. And so going back and using this as reflective time to sort of what is the main team that you need going forward, Sadly, in the criminal space, I feel like we probably had to go beyond that, and that I can't wait till we can turn that back on. But with everything else, as we mentioned, the trust of the states and immigration is humming. We've kept our entire PI team together, but knowing that every single expense being looked at, and even within PI, I'm looking at this not with a 30, 60-day window, but with a 120-day plus window. Like, what, not worst case scenario to act in fear, but being responsible. What if this goes on longer than we're sort of thinking short term? And if that's the case, what cases, for example, are 2 years out, Tyson, in your world? Are there cases are 2 years out? And can you hold back on paying, getting experts, doing depositions on those cases, and making sure that the cases that are nearer term that would be closing this year, or that you could get to settlement this year, or you can't get to trial right now, but making sure that you're doing everything possible and bifurcating what needs to happen now versus down the road.
So I think that's a really, really good point, because especially in the PI world, the cash flow has been consistent. It hasn't changed at all. Actually, our new client signups hasn't really taken that much of a dip. But one thing that we're keeping an eye on is our outgoing expenses, and we're sort of pulling back a little bit just in case, just to be careful once we get through this and once we see more light at the end of the tunnel. So we are backing off some of our expenses, even though we are going on offense. Like I said, there are some certain things where we can hold off on spending some money here and there, where maybe we don't pay the money for that expert yet. Maybe we pick that expert, maybe we don't give them that check quite yet because we don't need to yet. So there are some certain things where you can hold off on those big expenditures.
And I have been amazed at how often, by making an ask, we've had no problem getting things done. Just saying, hey, we had this budgeted for April. Can we push this till June? Again, being smart about it. We still need to fill the beast with marketing, and we want that there. But if you're doing pay-per-click for DUIs right now, and there are no DUIs, while you may get clicks and you may even get calls, there's nobody getting arrested. So you want to, don't check common sense at the door, and make sure that what you're spending money on is monetizable today, or is something that is part of your long-term program that you want, when this is undone.
Tyson, let me jump in here too. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead,
Well,
Lee.
I just wanted to say one thing, and I don't know how much Jay and I think Jay and Seth are both, living this in terms of letting go of people. When we talk about cutting expenses, the reality in a law firm is that that's your expense. That's the bulk of where your money goes, is these people. And I want to just say this, having been through this now over the years. You have a choice. You can either let go of people proactively if you see that you don't have the work for them to do, or you can dip into your reserves, dip into your line of credit, and keep paying them. If you keep paying them, and I say this from having been down this path and made this mistake, you cripple yourself in terms of hiring people back and hiring other people in the future. You make yourself less likely to be an employer down the road. The compassionate thing to do for your people and your community is to take action if you don't have a use for those people right now. And it doesn't feel that way. We're used to letting people go. We have these hushed discussions in the back room trying to decide what to do. This is not a situation where people don't expect it. They don't see it. Everybody's aware of what's going on. There's no surprises here. This is all anybody is talking about. So if you need to cut expenses and you have people that are not able to contribute right now because you just don't have the work, you're not going to be shocking them. And here's the crazy thing. I've now watched a number of people do this, both in the hotel and restaurant type industries and now increasingly in law firms. The people not only are not surprised, they are to some extent relieved to just know where they stand. And then I'm watching people say things like, hey, let's share the little bit that's left. Let's keep such and such employed by all reducing our income by 25%, and we'll keep this person working, and they're working together on it. We're all on the same team in this. It's not you against them. It's us all against this bigger problem. So I know everybody feels bad when they have to do this, but this is different. This is not like it is in a normal situation.
Thank you for those words, Lee.
I was just going to I was going to talk about, I talked to a vendor today and I told them that I wanted to cut my service and they said they'd give me 90 days free on the software. So that was interesting, but it digresses from what we just said, which I think is a really important point. I think we got to get close to wrapping up here pretty soon. And I just sort of want to go around, I think, one more time, Tyson, and ask everybody sort of what's your best piece of advice that we haven't already talked about? What are you thinking about next? What's the next domino that you're looking to fall?
I'm going to answer the opposite question since we've talked about some negatives, which is I'm sort of giddy about how quickly we can get things back once this is over. That's sort of if I talked about three things I was focused on, the joy is brought to me is figuring out how quickly I can undo the things that we were talking about here to be back in business at full tilt the moment that we feel that, again, this first part of the crisis is over. I have no doubt that Lee is correct and we're going to see an issue afterwards, but downturn I can deal with. It's the at least on the fee for service criminal side, when the velocity starts again, and just giddy about the idea of getting back in the game.
So I'll jump in. Use this time now to think about the bigger picture. You're learning a lot about your need for real estate, whether you need as much real estate as you've had. Some people are loving the working from home piece of this. The rest of the world has been doing more and more of this. Think about the theory of the firm. If you go look at Wikipedia on theory of the firm, you're going to see why law firms are law firms. It's all about a lack of transparency of information, the labor markets. This is creating a lot of transparency. A lot of people are looking at the idea of a firm and seeing that maybe it doesn't make the same level of sense that it used to. We need a shock to our system as lawyers to make change. And this is a shock to the system, and people are they say real estate leases are the glue that holds law firms together. Suddenly we need a lot less real estate. And the importance of all those rituals is people are seeing behind the curtain. So start thinking about where this goes long term. I think we really are seeing behind the curtain in a lot of ways. And we may see a shift of direction of how the profession works, and we may start looking a lot like other businesses and a lot less like law firms have looked when we come out of this.
Joey, I see the gears turning in your.
There's a lot of directions I can go in, but this is a pretty high caliber group, and so I'm trying to come up with the best thing that I have to say. I think that I'm realizing that it's never been more important for me to be honoring my word, especially with my team, which means both keeping my promises to the extent that I can, but also letting them know as quickly as I can when I'm not going to be able to. Because I think in the long run, if I can't be seen as somebody that my team can trust right now, then I'm not going to be able to get that back.
Good. Jay or Seth, you want to
go? I can go. I could just talk a little bit about, positivity is really seeing that the culture that we had among the team members in our office really sort of helped me recognize how good I had it, and how good I have it, and how good I will have it. I had to cut a weekend intake person who fully knew it was coming and actually reached out to me and said, I have a feeling you're not going to need me next weekend. Can I confirm that? And I said, well, I think that's going to be the case. And he said, great. Can I volunteer next weekend to just work for free? I said, well, no, legally you can't do that. And he's like, well, I want to come back to this firm when you guys will have me. Everybody wants me back. Everybody does want, these few people back. And so they're willing to figure out a way. It's going so far as to, can I just have an unpaid internship now? I don't do that for a number of legal reasons. But I have a culture where that my people who are still here are still connected and still talking to the people who are part-timers who don't even sit in the office with them, but they're chatting, just checking in on, making sure everybody's okay. So we have a really good cohesive team. And sort of as the figurehead, that you have a good team, but you think it. You don't necessarily know it, is what I mean. And now seeing how everyone's rallying around each other and rallying around to keep the firm operational, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So it's good to have that sort of positivity when you look back on everything that you've built.
Seth? Anything for us? Good? All right. So I understand that some of our presenters may need to go. And Jim, I don't know if you want to answer your own question, but if not, I was going to ask a couple more questions from the group if I can get a couple of you all to stay on a little bit longer. But Jim, do you want to answer your own question?
I'll just do some rapid fire. I'm good. I said enough.
Okay. So one of the questions was, and I'll go rapid fire as quickly as possible. One of them was about what are some tips on getting people to sign the contract over the phone?
Sign the contract over the phone?
Correct. So, like, since we can't meet with clients right now, what are some tips on getting them to sign while they're on the phone?
It's funny. I mean, this is not something new to us with a number of different practice areas. Many of them have already experienced that. The criminal department, with the exception of major cases, very large percentage already signing over the phone. PI, very, very high. I think the interesting dynamic has been trust in estates, which ironically is doing well now. But so the people that are the busiest are also the ones having to adapt to a new culture or protocol, and seeing people leveraging Zoom and other technologies. I feel that it is just like Lee was sort of referring to. People are now realizing it isn't that difficult to work remotely. I feel like we're seeing the same thing on signing, which is if that's your only way of doing it, like I said, just do it, and it happens. That it's a mental block generally, I find, for older school lawyers more than anything else. That if you have something that somebody needs and you're providing it at a price or with a quality that they want, that basically it's no different than in person, in that you should and will realize, wow, I could have been doing this all along, which would go to Lee's concept of a changing paradigm, that when we come out of this, there may be a lot more teleconference and a lot less in-person signings.
Yeah, and I'm going to go through these as quickly as possible. I just want to add a couple things. There's plenty of tools out there. It's probably easier now than it has ever been to get people to sign the contract electronically. Way easier because there's a good reason for it, right? So it's an easy sell. I don't think it's a hard sell right now. I've been doing it for almost 10 years. In the last 6 months, I've probably met with 3 people in person, get them to sign the contract. Most people don't have a problem with it because of this thing right here. I think Michelle Funkenbush has a really, really good question, and anybody can answer this, but it's, what are we realistically supposed to do if 50% of our income disappears because people aren't hiring? I've never had business debt. Other than cutting costs, should we get lines of credit during times like this?
I'll take this one. First of all, do not freak out. We are in we are not yet to reality. We're in this shock wave of this. It's still very, very early. Things will change. You can't judge this scenario entirely at this moment. It'll look different in 2 weeks. Think of it as you're on a tropical vacation. Make a pina colada, come back in 2 weeks and see where you stand, because it's going to look different as we enter a bit of a new normal. But in terms of lines of credit and borrowing money, I can't say strongly enough, be very careful about borrowing money primarily to give it to other people. That's where that money is going, is to your staff. And you're either going to feel like an asshole now, or you're going to feel like an asshole later. We are headed into a recession. You might as well feel like an asshole now and not have the debt, because you will then survive to play again in the future. I just don't want you to borrow money. I watched my brother with tears streaming down his face 9 months after the dot-com crash when he finally laid his people off. And he owed $1 million because he had paid those people for months while they couldn't get closed deals. And that what that did was crippled him going forward. So that's the big lesson that I've learned from being through this. Just don't do that to yourself.
That's great advice. I'm going to jump into the next question. What's everyone's thoughts on giving clients an extra 30 to 60 days to pay if they become unemployed?
I'd have no problem with that if they're. I mean, right as it is right now, if someone were to call me up and say, I'm on a payment plan, I need to add an extra month to it, I'm happy to do that. So I'd definitely do it under these circumstances. I mean, if you're in a position where you can do that, and I'd rather have, $250 in 3 weeks than have no dollars ever more. I mean, that's the way you got to look at it, I think. I'm not saying extend credit of $50,000 to somebody with an indefinite date on it. But if you can restructure it, if they've worked with integrity with you before, you should take it on a case-by-case basis.
And I believe even somewhere, of course, you have, you can't get blood from a stone. Assuming, you figure out what it takes to maximize that money. It's frustrating because it may get worse before it gets better. But, we're particularly, they're coming to us for help. We don't want to, if they're not working, they signed a payment agreement assuming a job was there.
And I'll just be the difficult, unpleasant person because these guys are so nice. I have never extended credit, not since I learned my lesson the hard way. I would not extend credit. They're not going to pay you in 30 days. Don't take action believing that. If there's no money, there's no money. Accept reality and move on to what can make.
To be
you
fair,
money.
I've spoken as a true family law lawyer, and the advice differs on different areas. And I don't disagree with Lee in family law. You have, because that's in any times you're not getting the money back. So we are dealing with different pieces. For here, on the criminal side, for example, the courts aren't open. So having a payment plan doesn't really hurt us right now because we're not in court.
Right.
Versus in family law, if you're burning hours, you're never going to see the money, and I get that.
Just on that note, just a comment about the courts. I am more optimistic than the courts seem to be about them getting back to work using the technology. I think they're giving us a lot of courts. I'm seeing 90 days. I really do believe that they are going to get it faster than we think, that we will see more things trickling in, not across the board, but I don't believe that they're going to be away from us as long as they think they are. They just haven't accepted what's happening fully. And I'm optimistic that some of them, at least in some jurisdictions, will employ more technology and put a lot of people back to work from home or whatever it is, rather than this blackout that we're getting in a lot of places.
I think Lee's right. I think that Seth and I are going to have problems in the criminal context because bringing inmates into a courthouse and then getting them back for their appearances is troubling, and they don't want to expose one inmate that can go back and expose 1,000 others to another inmate who may have come from a place that has it. That's where we're starting. I'm on a task force here in Connecticut trying to address that issue, and that's where we're really having the problems because the courthouses can connect via video to clients, but the lawyers can't. They're trying to figure out a way to make that happen. But these are all problems that can be solved by technology if people want them to be. And I think now, like you said, Lee, we're at a sea change where people want to get the changes, whereas before they were happy to just let existing practices go on and on. So fingers crossed, we're going to start seeing some changes across the board for all of us.
And Lee, not to be the naysayer here, but in D.C. they have video conferencing for lawyers to speak to their clients from jail. Currently, the only way to do that is to go to a facility to watch your client. I mean, that's you can't make this stuff up. So I believe that this go around will change all of that, but they are not ready for prime time now.
Right. Can I just say that there are obviously very smart people in this room, and I know that the entire group is filled with smart people. There are no right answers here, and I think that we as lawyers tend to fall into this, what is a way to solve this problem. But right now more than ever is a time to innovate. And at the end of the day, we're all entrepreneurs and business owners. And this is, in a lot of ways, a way for us to show up in a place of curiosity and innovation and saying, there is no blueprint for this. How can we make a plan and run with it?
Agreed.
Love that.
Love it. All right, I'm gonna ask one last question. Yeah, I'm gonna initially answer it and just see what your thoughts are on it, because the question is about what do you do with clients that aren't very technological? And here's my response to that: don't force it, right? So we had a client. Just because you want to do video doesn't mean you have to do video, right? We had a client last week. We wanted to meet with her via video. I sent her all the details. She couldn't figure it out, so we just switched to a phone call. No big deal. Like, just switch to a phone call. Don't force the technology down your clients' throats. Use it whenever it's effective. Don't force it. Are there any other thoughts on that?
No, you're 100% right. I never talk to anybody on video in my real life. It's only for coronaviruses. It's like I make phone calls and go for walks with my earbuds and talk to people. This is unnecessary. The phone and a laptop and some earbuds, and you're good to go with this. Don't get bogged down in it, and don't worry about they don't need video. They're happy to talk to you on the phone.
And I don't know, was it Jay, were you working on it, or was it Hannah was working on something, the one-way video back in the day? I agree
wanted
with
that.
both. Yeah,
I wanted that.
agree
I
with
was
both
trying
Lee
to
and
find the
Tyson.
right
We
solution.
can advertise video conferencing for our clients from today. They want the phone. That said, when you can get it, and now you're getting people who are tech savvy who are at home. You're talking trusted estates where they're used to coming to the office. I find that if you can get the video piece, you are so much closer to an in-person meeting that I acknowledge that a phone intake has a lower percentage close rate than somebody in the office. It's a lot easier to make it happen. The transaction costs are less. The velocity, there are a bunch of good things about it. But if we were honest with ourselves, the actual close rate compared to somebody sitting there, I would argue that when you can get the video component, you are one step, you're probably that intermediate step between close rate of phone versus in person.
Great stuff. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for all of you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Lee, you're in Tokyo, or I think that's where you are in Tokyo. You're in Japan. And so thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate everybody being on here.
Really.
Jay, Seth, Ryan, or Joey, really do appreciate it. Jimmy, I don't know where you went. I know you're on here somewhere, but thanks everybody.
Good luck to everybody. We're going to get through this.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Lee. Good seeing you, Lee.
Good to see you, Jay. Good to see you guys. Talk to you soon.
Good seeing you, Joey. Thanks,
I'll
Tyson.
I'll
Jim.
unblock you now, Seth. I'll take you off the block.
I appreciate it.
See you guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Good work, everybody.
Book Live has stopped.
Still can't get rid of me.